Okay, we're gonna get started. Welcome to the July 11th Planning Board meeting. Will everybody please stand for the salute? of flag? Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The trustees in their wisdom have rotated the chairmanship. I'm now your new chairman. I know that disappoints a lot of people. And I've got big shoes to fill, so fortunately I have Dave right next to me, and I want to acknowledge Dave's been a planning board member for 18 years. And he actually became chairman when Vic Levy, was a sensational chairman for decades, uh, left the position. And he's been a real asset to the village. And I want to acknowledge that and thank him.
Thank you, Ralph. But as people will also forget, Ralph was chairman at one point in the past. So in addition to following Vic, I also followed Ralph, and that was indispensable to my development. as the
Hopefully
official
you'll follow me. I'll follow him again.
We'll just keep leapfrogging each other.
We'll just keep leapfrogging. Okay, we're postponing the decision on Citarelli. That's 141 Montauk Highway. We're gonna start the meeting with Hampton Landmark LLC, 97 Hazelwood Avenue.
Good afternoon, members of the board. Heather Reed for Hampton Landmark LLC. So we wanted to, I understand this is a work session and we wanted to put in front of you what our proposed site plan would hopefully look like, before we go and get full engineering plans and start moving forward. We wanted to get some feedback from the board. So just to refresh, in case the board's not aware, this property, 97 Hazelwood, was the subject of a 2019 ZBA decisions for a change of use to, in that decision, allow two uses subject to site plan approval. And I don't believe the site plan was ever finalized or moved forward. And I think that goes to Ron, your second question or point that you had in your memo. There was no that site plan that was finalized with respect to the prior decision. So flash forward to now, my clients have purchased the property. They went back to the ZBA a couple of months ago to extend that decision or renew that decision and get an additional use for their transportation business. Us, and that decision is subject to site plan. It is 3 use. So what we're proposing is if you have the as-built survey in front of you, right now on the property, there is a metal building and then a sort of long and narrow building behind it. We're proposing to remove that building, keep the metal building, and then replace the building that you see on Hazelwood Avenue with a slightly larger, sort of Morton style, building. Okay, and if you look at the proposed floor plans, this is how we're proposing that the offices would be set up. Essentially, it's two like general contractor type offices and then my client's transportation business.
Plans. See that. We're gonna start by saying, in a perfect world, we'd like to see the Quonset hut go away while we're reviewing the site. I mean, that's just my feed on it. I don't know what anybody else on the board has to say about that, but I mean, since we're knocking everything down and building everything up, and we're adding an additional use. I think the time's appropriate to see and explore the possibility of removing the Quonset hut, which is probably a World War II leftover, unless I'm mistaken.
I actually think that building may be in slightly better condition than the building that we are proposing to take down.
Well, that's good.
And
I'm happy about that.
I mean, certainly I can talk to the client about that. I mean, obviously we can talk to issue associated with all of this work as well. So certainly what we're proposing will vastly improve the existing site and what's, currently what's there now. Obviously with the new septic and, some landscaping and appropriate parking. Right now, none of that exists at the site.
I would suspect that regardless of what this board thinks about your Quonset hut, you're gonna have another board which is gonna have a much bigger issue than we are.
Potentially.
I would guarantee it. So you may want to discuss
Sure.
that now.
And so, we got some high level comments from Brad and from Ron. I didn't know if you wanted me to kind of go through those comments and answer some of the questions that you had. You know, obviously we know that we need to come back to you with, engineered plans, landscaping, lighting, drainage, all of that, which we plan to do. We can look at,
Could you discuss what the transportation use is? I'm not sure when
Yep.
talked about the fuel,
Yeah.
some transportation uses have their own gas storage.
this will not
But
be the case.
you're only talking about the guy that operates the two home fuel tankers, whatever they are.
And that's essentially, that use is, there's no fuel
On
storage.
site, okay.
Right, it's his office use and then his truck parking there. And with respect to the transportation business, it's essentially an office use, one or two employees answering phones, scheduling, appointments. And then, there'll be no pickups or drop-offs from the location and no maintenance or anything. Like, obviously, we have a company that we send the cars out to if they need to be repaired or.
That's what I like
Oil
to clarify is that because you have a storage area behind that office and what's gonna happen there? What are you gonna use it for?
The building in the back, the old barn site?
No, you have three separate units. And the warehouse, what are you gonna do with the warehouse that's associated with the transportation business? How is it gonna be used? How is that space gonna be used?
Either for an automobile or for storage, but not for, it's not a garage, if that's what you're asking.
Well, that's what I wanted to clarify is, because we'll probably want to put some conditions in about how it's used. So we exclude, maintenance.
Mechanics and maintenance. Yeah, that's not gonna happen at the site.
You know, if they're bringing in cars and keeping them out of the weather, then that's one thing. Yeah, that might even count some of that as park, but.
Yeah, we don't do any, repairs on the vehicles. We don't even do any oil changes ourselves. It all goes out.
Okay.
100%.
What about cleaning them inside? You clean them inside?
No, we have, all of our cars have unlimited car washes.
And it's right next door. So.
The best deal in town.
But that's the kind of thing I want to clarify. I guess the other kind of major thing I had is what we're doing in front of those buildings. Because in my concept of a site plan, will allow you the driveways, but those two fuel trucks parked out in front. You want to see landscaping and vegetation in front of it, except for your two driveways. And we'll have to figure out how that happens, but.
Yeah, we'll explore, we certainly will explore, like, sort of, obviously with the landscaping plan, the best way to sort of shield the lot, obviously, the screening that is, to the south is more of a buffer style, but the screening to the, north in front of the concrete plant is less so. I mean, I think we were thinking sort of somewhere in between, obviously we have the curb, we have the concrete apron, and when you pull in, we don't want to block any, make it hard to see when you're coming in and coming out of there.
I just don't wanna see that continuous asphalt pad.
Right.
We wanna establish a clear edge of road.
Yep.
That lines up somewhat with the curb from the concrete plant into the grass in front of the,
Well, we're gonna have curbs.
Well, that we can talk about. Okay, it's the site to the south that doesn't have any curbs. Usually we do require a curb. And that would define your driveways and also protect your
I
vegetation.
thought we'd actually gone through that on the last iteration of this plan with Alicia.
And I don't know, I wasn't involved in that, and
Okay.
I was able to obtain from the file was sort of a very, very plan, but I'm not sure it ever actually.
I think that's where we actually were in those conversations, with the aesthetics of the front of the building.
Not sure we got all the way there because it came in and I think the ZBA may have referred it to us. We never really got into site plan.
For secret purposes, 'cause this is an unlisted action, because even though it's a relatively small development, because a use variance was involved, it couldn't stay on the type 2 list. And so since the planning board would have been involved, the zoning board referred it to you all, because you're so good at being the lead agency for site plans, to be lead agency and find the environmental certificates. So the site plan you looked at in, early 2019 was probably rudimentary, although you probably did touch on these aspects. But assuming it would further come back to you, but I don't believe there was ever a planning board application. with the-
No.
site plan.
Yeah, I don't think there was.
And one of it's really a clarification. You've got that power line running through the middle of the site.
Yeah.
Does Lookout or PSCG have an easement?
They don't, there's no recorded easement, in title for that, obviously. We would love to move that and change that, so obviously that's gonna take coordination with PSE&G.
Even the other one that's right up against the existing building, it's gonna be right up against the new building, new metal building. Constructed. Yeah.
It's kind of unusual. I don't usually see those kind of power lines running across the private property. without an easement.
So, I'm Anthony Portillo, A&P Architecture. We are in discussion in moving those meters to an H-frame on the side yard. And,
I was talking about
well, the meters are attached to the pole that's in the front of the building.
the front,
Right.
not the other one.
Yeah, that one, and we are in discussion of removing that as well. I think it's been going pretty well. I think the front pole is definitely a possibility because of how the drop kind of goes back over the street, then comes back over the property. So I think they can actually just come right off that transformer, put an H frame and put the meters there and get rid of the pole. That's one of my concerns as well.
Site doesn't have a an easement through there, they might want to either get an easement or maybe move that pole anyway, the one.
Sure.
Can they compel them to give an easement?
They can condemn it, probably, but they never do.
Yeah, that'd fix it.
It would be.
They might wanna move it just so they could work on it without having to get permission from the property.
It's also, must be a problem over on on the west side.
That Bobcat could have an accident.
Both.
You know, you're
The
gonna have.
pole, I mean, I'm going off memory, but it's shorter too. It's like not really a standard pole anyway. So I think they've got to probably do something with it. Sounds like maintenance very well. In regards to the building, we are, I mean, again, we haven't really developed these. I think we've said that. I am considering landscaping in the front of the building, something I've spoken to the owners about. They're open to that. We just put in some minor landscaping, but that will be developed. And I mean, my opinion on the Quonset is I actually like it. I think it's interesting and I think it actually appeals nicely to us putting in the gable. And I think the merge of the two shapes works out fairly well on the front elevation. So, that's my opinion. And I think that, the new building, will be very pretty and will look a lot better than what's there. I actually live on, off of Hazelwood, so, I go by there a lot and, it's pretty bad what's there or what's going on there now. So I think what is being proposed is 100 times better. I do think taking down a structure like the Quonset that it to me is structurally sound. I did look at it. If we need to look at it with an engineer and you want to report, but it'd be a lot to take down and rebuild, in my opinion. So
Well, you wouldn't rebuild it, you put in probably a different style of building. I mean,
well, I
it
would
might
imagine the wording would
precipitate,
be
might precipitate new drawings, as a matter of fact.
right. I mean the I would imagine that it would just become all of Morton building at that point if you're gonna remove it. I'm just saying removing it. There's some cost to that, and it's not falling down. It's in good working
we-
order.
See, I mean, since we know this is gonna be the major issue anyway, should we just see what ARB thinks about it as it is right now before we get too far afield?
I don't think we got anything.
I think the zoning board is probably more pressing, just because the most recent variance that added the third use didn't at that point contemplate. It contemplated some sort of reconstruction of those buildings because they're in rough shape. But they haven't seen this with the larger Morton building and complete removal of that other building. So I think what we could talk about process is, there's a couple of things up top is the secret, is the negative declaration you all found, 5 years ago. Is this new application consistent with that? I'm not asking anyone to answer now, but something to think about and make findings to that. We could say, yes, that's consistent, or you're gonna do another determination. You also, by code, have to do a public hearing on this. And so I would generally recommend not to make any secret determination until you hold the public hearing anyway, so you can get some comment. And I would imagine you would open a public hearing, get some comments. Maybe then say, hey, why don't you go talk to the zoning board and see what they have to say about this latest iteration before you close that public hearing, and then you can make the determination at that point. That's just.
That's a great roadmap.
how I
Thank
see
you.
it.
You know, those Quonset huts are fairly famous, being developed pre-World War II, Quonset, Rhode Island. The Historical Society probably appreciate it a lot if you put a sign on it with the history of that design, because it's considered a really marvel of industrial design at the time to come up with that pre-stressed half curve and how well they worked. And they were used all over the world during World War II. And there's very few of them left, but just what you were saying, they're inherently structurally strong. And most people don't know much about them, but
I mean, my personal opinion is taking something down that doesn't need to be taken down.
donate it to the historical society.
Next to the window.
I understand,
We got a great one, has some historic significance.
I mean, I'm sure they're gonna have their comments, but I mean, I think if we can, you know, if it's about fixing it, like making it look nicer and integrating it into what we're proposing, I would say that's a better solution. My opinion.
And to Dave's point, we could also, in that period, we would involve, you'd send notices out to any of the involved agencies, which could include the ARB, so they could chime in on the Quonset hut and the new Warren building.
I mean, I would, you know, and I'm sure you guys know that area, but obviously there's a lot of industrial stuff going on back there. And you have the one resident that's across the street, so I think.
Well, you're gonna have a lot more residents.
No,
Very
no,
short.
I know. We need
So-
speed bumps on it. We'll talk about that one later. My two kids, I'm on. That's gonna get.
Extensive discussions on the subject.
After you build this, where are the plow trucks gonna be parked?
They
I mean, right now they're parked in front.
need to be parked in the parking. That's the idea.
Well, you know,
Yeah. I mean, they really, honestly, not tell the town what they should be doing, but that's a violation. Parked and.
you know, it just wondering like, what's the plan for the future? Like,
It would be to park in the
they're
park.
park in the parking lot.
You know, we have ample parking. I used, warehouse, but warehouse and storage are the same parking requirements. So I mean, I could change that to storage, but it's in the same.
Just a general
Yeah.
question, like
Yeah.
the trucks are parked out front now, so with you're upgrading the site. So
Yeah, no proposed, parking spaces in the front of the building.
Do you park trucks in other areas where you plan on coming over here with additional trucks to park there?
Different.
Are there other trucks parked in other areas, in industrial areas you plan on?
Oil company, that's all they have is what's there now.
Two trucks. then.
Yeah, they're two trucks, yeah.
But we'll park them legally at some point.
We're proposing like a gate and, you know, it's gonna be curbed off, and, you know,
Make it as nice
yeah, I think the,
as far as the concept building it, like Anthony said, it is structurally sound. We went in there, when we first looked at the property, we were amazed how nice it actually was. And, you know, we were thinking about a white building with a brown roof. We have some samples that we were gonna bring forth at a later date. But if we could do that, put the gable on it to connect the two buildings, and then we wouldn't leave the building like a silver. We'd probably paint it to match, so it would all flow nicely and clean it up, put new lights on the front, some new ornamental lights, but we think it would look nice. Obviously you guys are in charge, but, you know, I personally think it would look quite nice, you know? But that's our thoughts on it. We want it all to, you know.
Larry likes it.
What's that?
There was a
We'd have to have a plaque.
quite famous automobile museum called Henry Austin Clark, that was, as you go into Southampton, three huge Quonsets that
Oh,
have
yeah.
been there forever and ever and ever, since, I don't know, just after World War II.
I think they just built one on the left side when you go down on the left,
They-
on
They
39.
just restored it.
Knocked
That's
it all
the,
down, yeah.
They restored
But
it.
then they put back little false front, that little half circles that look like a Quonset hut, but they're only about 15 feet deep.
Yeah.
And that's an entrance. I don't know what the building's gonna be, but I suspect it's gonna have something to do with old cars.
Oh, that's
Because it
neat.
was pretty famous.
That is neat. And then we have the building in the back, which is an old barn building that's probably been there forever. We're gonna take that down because structurally, the buildings that we're proposing taking down are very old and probably not built the proper way. So we're gonna take it all down, clean it up, make it nice for the village, and that's our goal. With your guidance, obviously.
I mean, and I think some of the things too is that there's no drainage, so everything's just leaching where it wants to go. There's a cesspool basically, so that's obviously not good. It's not improved in the rear, it's just dirt. So I mean, I think a lot of those things are, you know, part of this application, positive.
Given where you are in the village, that area, I mean, I appreciate the chairman's comments. And again, in an ideal world, we'd like to do everything perfectly, but in some circumstances, we gotta be a little bit more realistic. To your colleague's point out there, the more you can do to make it look nicer. Sure.
If it's a solid structure
Yeah, if it's, and that's something.
and has historical value,
If it's nowhere, so nobody can see it, what's its value?
everybody will see it. He'll paint it white.
Yeah. I mean, we're obviously gonna do an exterior rendering and we'll propose what it will look like, but
I'm sure the ARB will be real interested.
yeah.
I would.
I've dealt with them a few times. I'll make you know, we're gonna have to go through that.
Certainly, I would, you know, something relatively informal from an engineer, somebody could say this thing's in good shape, it's not gonna fall down anytime soon. That would certainly go a long way towards bolstering your, who wants to tear down a building that's fine? Yeah, that's kind of stupid. So, just.
So I guess we'll be seeing you again. We look forward to seeing.
Well, before we do that, I just want to get up, because this is just a work session, so, should this go on for a public hearing before this board? And so that way you can, get public comment and then kick me over to the, ZBA?
Recommend we, just since the public hearing is required by code, I think it's, if you think that the application and the plan right now is sufficient enough to open the public hearing, we can actually schedule that for early
I
August.
think we've got
If there's stuff that you want to see,
That's a couple of things that Ron points out, certainly.
stuff you want to see
drainage,
tweaked first, maybe they come back next meeting, and then we'll schedule
Well,
it.
the drainage, we can get into that with it, or, because I think this plan is gonna be preliminary. The drainage calculations for the parking lot. Figure that out when we get into, you know, the kind of details we can figure out the only thing I think we need to address now that should be before the public is what we do in front of the building.
Okay.
And clean that up and show where the road is and how it's gonna be treated, because I think that's the one big question we have.
You an aversion of curbing it?
No, we're open to whatever you guys want. That's why we're here for the discussion. We actually had some, if you look at the plan, we had some flower beds on there. I contacted a landscaper that has been in front of the board before about the landscape design on this. And, we got our paperwork in, so we ended up here, but we figured we would revisit that. But we're already in discussion with somebody on that. But if you guys have any thoughts that are practical and make sense for us to do, we were open to it. You know, I don't wanna load the front with like green giants or something, I mean,
Yeah, but you've got a plan here with some,
yeah, the whole, like that whole bottom, I think the bottom, if we're looking at the plan on the bottom right, that's where we propose putting the H frame, that's like a nice little pad that could be grassed or put some seagrass into it. That's the side closest to, the cement plant. And then we have on the left side, which is the parking lot for the auto body shop, but it is fenced off, there's a little area there. You'd probably get another curb around there and probably maybe some seagrass to match the seagrass on the other corner. And then we were originally thinking maybe some boxwoods or something across the front in those beds that are there.
yeah, see that?
You know,
If you could get some ornamentals, you know, some, just to soften it up as you drive,
Yeah.
it's not so stark, I think you'll accomplish. I mean, like I said, you don't want.
It looks good with
You don't want
the
6 foot green giants.
Exactly,
You've done
yeah.
10 feet in a couple of years, you gotta be able to see the building.
absolutely, since the fuel oil trucks are a little bit bigger, maybe show those two spots in the back. I think
Yeah.
that would go a long way. Just, say like, this is where the fuel oil trucks are going to be. And then the other thing that I just made the comments, so I don't know if anyone read it, but, the driveway gates, they're showing a driveway gate relatively close to the street, so if anyone pulling up to it would be sticking out into the travel aisle to open it. So typically, we like to get, in residential areas, the code is 20 feet back so that the truck or car can get fully out of the roadway. That's not the same case in commercial, districts, so that's kind of up to the planning board, but I thought I would bring it to your attention because it is it's a little close to the street.
Yeah, I don't think that's about, this is actually why I stepped back up. My question here would be bringing the curbing out to edge of pavement, which would become it's past the property line.
I don't think,
Oh, you're saying curbing would be in line with the property line?
I want it in line with
well,
curbing that's,
whatever we should do, we should put it in line probably with the I think there's a curve on the concrete. Yeah.
Yeah.
You should connect it with that.
Okay, I'll take a look at that. But I do think that's forward the property line. Because you have like a decent amount of a buffer between
Yeah.
pavement and the property.
You don't want to take the edge of pavement, go back all the way to the property line.
Sure.
You see that grass and stuff.
Like, or it's shown on the survey, but if you incorporate that into your site plan, it can show that, you know, if a vehicle or truck could get out of the roadway, and you can have curbing within the right of way, that's up to Matt, DPW superintendent, to take a look at.
Typically, curb in front of a site is at least 8 feet off of the property line on a 50-foot road. These roads, pavement's a little narrow, it can even come out more than that.
And I had written, I don't know if you saw the memo that I wrote, just some, architectural comments about, you know, that it would benefit to see some of the colors. And
Yeah, I would tie.
I think it would help just to sort of, you know, if you wanna keep the Quonset hut, which I think is a great idea, just to sort of, they're harmonious with each other, whether it's a color palette or material palette or whatever, I think that would be helpful. And then I had just made a comment about the handicap spots being so remote from one another, and it just looks like you're showing handicap accessibility to all three offices, but I don't see how they're actually getting in those offices.
So the reason we did them in the two locations, the handicap at the front is because the access to the offices are in the front to the two buildings. For the new building, it has two offices. And then the Kwanzaa, it's in the rear to get into the office. And basically, we're just gonna bring the pavement up to get to the door. We're keeping the doors low enough that we're just gonna have a little sloped pavement to get into the offices. So that was the reason for the handicaps being in two different locations like that.
So I think you wanna look at it then on the space that's closest to the street in terms of how you're entering the two offices in the front. Cause it doesn't look like that area aligns with. Maybe it aligns with the two doors. Is that, I don't know what this square is showing. Is that a,
That's like, that's gonna be like a sloped pavement to get you into the two doors. And we're assuming it to be pretty low, you could see it in elevation. The doors. So basically just the pavement will slope at a light slope to get there. But these are far from being detailed to that capacity. We understand that. So I mean, that was just after this hearing or meeting, we wanted to make sure we're going down the right road before doing more, I guess. But I will make sure that's clear.
so what do we decide? Do you want to make another submission and then we'll put you on for public hearing? Yeah.
Yeah, we just did the comments this week. The board needs a minute to look over everything. So if you want to get in, if you can get an updated rendering in at least 10 days before the meeting, we can discuss it at that meeting and then hopefully schedule a public hearing at a future meeting.
You good?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
We appreciate you coming in, and site's gonna look good when we go on through. Thank you.
Hope you guys appreciate your time.
Thank you. We have one set of minutes from June 27th. Need a motion to accept the minutes as written. All in favor? Need a motion to close the meeting. Our next meeting is July 27th, the 25th.